Although many idealists don't like it, money is important. Money, or the lack thereof, has a huge effect on the quality of our lives. In some cases, it is literally the difference between life and death. Last week I posted a video about how I am saving about $16,000 a year on utilities. Specifically on heat, electricity, condo fees, real estate taxes, internet and cell phone fees. This is significant, but it is not the largest expense for a senior citizen, which I am becoming. So I'd like to talk about this now. This is not my natural voice, this is artificial intelligence and a computer-generated voice. I type in sentences and I get back these spoken audio files. It is much easier and faster for me, and easier for you to understand, particularly if you are not a native English speaker. So what is the most expensive thing in life? This picture is a nursing home. It is in northern Wisconsin, and it is where a very wealthy woman I know lived last summer. In the winter she lives in Arizona in a $500,000 house. But summer heat there is unbearable, and so she goes back to Wisconsin with her daughter and my brother, and stays in this nursing home. She is in her mid-90s and too old to live in a house with stairs like my brother's house. Although her body is failing, her mind is sharp and she still plays a mean game of cards. So the three of us visited her while I was in Wisconsin for 10 days. This is a lot nicer than most nursing homes. She can have her own furniture, so she has a real bed and not an ugly metal hospital bed with a hard mattress covered in waterproof plastic like most nursing homes have. There is a kitchenette with a standard refrigerator and a table for 4 people, a sink and an electric hot plate, and her own dishes. The living area has 2 reclining chairs and a small sofa. The bath had a walk-in shower like you see in some handicapped rooms in a good hotel. She gets 3 meals a day in a cafeteria, and an aide comes by her little apartment to remind her to take her pills on schedule. There is a registered nurse on duty 7/24 for the 500 inmates. It isn't home, but for 4 months a year it is not hell either. It is $6,000 a month. This is insignificant for her, but not for me, and probably not for you either. This next picture is also an upscale nursing home and likely the best future we can afford in the USA. Not $72,000 a year, but maybe $60,000. But that only delays the inevitable loss of a lifetime of savings unless we die quickly. Social Security and savings can't cover such an expense for very long. But most Americans don't have much savings. And unless we work for a successful Fortune 500 company or the government for all our career, we won't have much or any pension. IRAs, unless we are very lucky, get eaten away by inflation, which, government lies notwithstanding, has been above 15% for the last 2+ years. Of course, there are many less expensive places. Many will allow an elderly person or couple to prepay for life. Since many Americans own a house and most houses in the USA cost more than $250,000, you sign over the house and your Social Security minus a small allowance goes directly to the nursing home. And then you and maybe your spouse get to live in something that is not a dump. But God help you if you get stuck in a double room with some fat dude that rattles the roof with his snoring. And think for a minute, let's say that you and or your spouse have been in that nursing home for 5 years. Your savings are gone, as is the money from your house. All the nursing home gets for your care is your Social Security, let's say $1,500 a month. They lose money on you every month. So, do you think in this situation they want you to be healthy and happy and live another 5 years? Like hell they do, and this is why so many elderly people are physically and mentally abused. You don't feel well today? Okay, we will call the visiting nurse maybe tomorrow. You want to go for a walk for mental health? Sorry, you are not allowed to leave the building alone and visiting hours are tomorrow. This is best case, when you can more or less take care of yourself. You can take a shower unassisted. You don't need to be fed. You can dress yourself. This was my father's existence in the last 18 months of his life. He hated leaving the house he built, but he was half blind from macular degeneration and could not live alone. He talked of suicide a lot in the last 6 months, and then he ate less and less and grew weaker and weaker. A bad way to end his life. In what can most accurately be described as a prison. But what was I and my brother to do? He needed full-time care. He could not stay in his house, and in the USA, there are no good alternatives to what we did: move him to a mid-range nursing home. He was excessively careful with his money. He was not going to pay $6,000 a month, though I wish he had. We looked for live-in help in his home, but full-time help was unavailable even in a small town. Plus, the nursing home changed while he was there. Initially, he could leave for a walk and come and go during the day, and his eyesight was good enough that he did not get lost. The pictures make it look nicer than it is. They don't show the patients that have lost control of their emotions and cry or moan all day, making the common areas unpleasant. The rooms in the pictures look larger and nicer than they really are. A bed may look nice, but sleeping on a cheap mattress encased in plastic is not like the bed you and I are used to. There may be a permanent stench of age and stale urine. It is not, by any stretch of the imagination, home. My mother had it worse. She became senile and lost all of her memories after age 15 or so. Her last 3 years were in a wheelchair, and in a bed in what originally was the hospital where she gave birth to her children, and then the hospital where she was born in her hometown. The staff took care of her body, no bed sores or the like. In rational moments, she was probably hoping that it would not get worse and take too long. Most of her days were spent with her teenage friends 65 years in the past. But it can be even worse, for those who cannot afford much. My parents were paying customers in mid-range nursing homes. Look at the inmates in a basic nursing home. Notice something? Almost all of them are white. Notice something else: the employees are not. And don't be surprised when I tell you that often the so-called care that is given to inmates can be physical torture and even murder, which is rarely detected, much less punished. Changing a diaper for a baby is not a big deal or difficult. Try changing a diaper on a senile adult who fights with you. Especially if a previous employee did beat that old man, and now he is scared and believes he is fighting for his life. It happens, and it is inevitable, when the employees are underpaid, overworked, and have been told every day of their life that white people are evil and the cause of every misfortune in their life. And now they are tasked with changing a really nasty diaper on an uncooperative adult they have absolutely no empathy for. And there is another problem: contagious diseases. Crooked politicians put COVID patients into nursing homes after they were discharged from the hospital. The result was tens of thousands of unnecessary deaths among the nursing home inmates. Even if we don't have politicians deliberately killing nursing home inmates to reduce Medicaid payments, any contagious disease can cause a massive death toll in an overcrowded nursing home. They say that a hospital is a dangerous place for a patient, and it is true, but nursing homes are worse. So, to get personal, I don't have $2 million in assets and pensions, which is what the financial experts say is necessary for a comfortable retirement and end of life. In fact, I have considerably less than $1 million. I have made a decision about how I live my retirement and how I can avoid a nursing home completely. There is some risk, but nothing in life is risk-free. Most importantly, my children are never going to have to put me in a nursing home and live with the regrets of doing so. More about my decision later in this video. What about you? Maybe you feel pretty good about your retirement due to IRAs and the equity in your house. Fine, but don't get overconfident. Things are not as good as they seem now. The USA is hopelessly in debt. No nation in the history of the world has ever been in as bad a debt situation as the USA is now. We are in uncharted waters, and there are icebergs, and our nation is led by a corrupt captain who is now senile. The fact is that there is only one way out, and that is to print money out of thin air. Printing money inevitably causes inflation, and we have inflation. That inflation, real inflation, has been over 15% annually for almost 3 years now. The fact that the Consumer Price Index now is 3% is a bald-faced lie. Now, understand that the Consumer Price Index is used to determine how much of an adjustment is made to Social Security. So for those of us for whom Social Security is significant, our cost of living goes up 15% a year and our Social Security goes up 3%. Not exactly a pleasant fact to know. But it gets worse. private pensions are not usually indexed at all. Government pensions may be, but at that 3% CPI figure, not the real 15%. So you may be feeling pretty good right now, but what happens if the USA goes into a depression and the value of your house in inflated dollars goes down 50%? Find an inflation calculator and enter a 12% real inflation rate, the difference between real inflation and the CPI, and see what it does to a fixed income IRA. If your IRA is in stocks, consider what a depression could do to the stock market. Internationally, the dollar is still king, but BRICS is going to enable most of the world to avoid using the dollar. And this will, when it happens, reduce the value of the dollar by at least 40%. So for that year, inflation is going to be in the 50% range, not 15%. Who will be hurt the most by inflation? Old people on fixed income, of course. Those facing an impossible nursing home bill most of all. Now, back to me and my probable solution. I am not going to live in a nursing home. I will probably live into my mid-90s in my own home. I will not have to eat cafeteria food or sleep on a cheap mattress or put my cat down or listen to the crying and moans of agony from my neighbors or smell stale urine. My father was fully rational until his last week at age 92. Except for his eyesight, he was fully capable of taking care of himself with minimal help. There are no guarantees, of course, but the odds are in my favor. I expect to get help, and eventually live in help, even 7 by 24 live in help. I can afford such help. Now, how is this possible? Easy. I retired outside the USA, to a place where the cost of living is substantially less. I bought a condo here. These are the pictures of my condo. I already have 3 possible people to help me if I need full-time help in my last few months. No, it will not be their job to do the nasty jobs that a dying man will cause. Their job is to hire a medical professional to do them. And I can afford this, probably on Social Security alone, even if the buying power of Social Security is down 50%. But how did I and how can you find such a place? While I show you pictures of my condo, I will explain the basic requirements that you and I need to make an informed choice. First, do such places exist in the USA? The answer is yes, but a qualified yes. If you live near an Amish community, or near the Mexican border, or you have sufficient financial resources, you can live in your American home until you are a week or so away from death. Perhaps you can even die in hospice in your home. I am also going to presume that you speak English and have at most a rudimentary knowledge of other languages, and that your ancestry is European, and that your religion is Christian, Jewish, or none at all, and that you have somewhere between $50,000 and $1.5 million in assets plus Social Security, and that you are in your 60s or more. Obviously, the older you are, the less money you need. I am also going to assume that you probably will be reasonably independent for at least 5 years. That you want to go to a normal grocery store and cook some of your own meals. Maybe you want to participate in a hobby. Maybe you want to go to a classical music concert or go fishing or skiing or to the beach. And that you want social interaction, possibly even with the opposite gender. You don't want to live in a gated retirement community of other old Americans and play card games with other old Americans as your primary entertainment. Internet is also a requirement, as you would like to have a video call with relatives still in your original part of the USA. And above all, you want to do all these things without worrying about how much they cost. Without a tight fixed budget that says you can't stop for coffee and a snack more than a few times a week. Yes, you would like to own a car. How does my situation fit these requirements? I live in a large complex of condos. This is a gated community, primarily for families with children. There is a large modern grocery store a 5-minute walk from my condo, or groceries can be delivered. I cook for myself most of the time, but I can also order food from Uber Eats or many other choices. I have been to concerts comparable to New York Broadway or the Boston Pops or the New York Philharmonic, and they don't break my budget. If I go to that equivalent of Broadway alone, I do not need to come home alone, understand? I like to socially dance, and I take 2 private dance lessons for an hour every week. I have averaged 2 dance partners for the last 4 years, and they are younger than my children. Pretty and nice too, but they are casual friends, and that is okay by me. I can go skiing at a world-class resort and spend 1/4 what I would spend at an American resort. I can drive 6 hours to an ocean beach and stay for a few days and spend less than $200. Or I can go to a local beach. An interesting fact, I had a first date last summer with a reasonably attractive 30-something local woman. She suggested we go to the local beach. But she surprised me, she took me to a nude beach. She is annoying though. She tells me to pick her up at 1400 hours and then she is finally ready at 1600 hours, and then she does not let me get a full night of sleep, so she only visits once every 10 days or so. I have internet, and it is super fast and reliable, faster than 90% of the people in the USA have, so a video call is only limited by the quality of the connection in the USA. I can stop for a quality espresso coffee and a sweet roll and spend $1. And it is better than Starbucks as the coffee is in a ceramic cup and the pastry is freshly baked. And yes, I drive a legal car. In 5 years I have gotten stopped twice for speeding and gotten ticketed. Both times it cost me under $50 and did not affect my insurance. Actually, I have gotten stopped more times, but the officer just let me go. When the time comes, I have 4 good friends who will help me. Primarily by checking that the live-in help is taking good care of me. One is currently in Europe but will likely return in a few years, and our relationship is very similar to brother and sister. Now I would like to discuss something about human nature. It is human nature to relate to people that look like our families, who share a similar religion and lifestyle. Maybe you are thinking about South or Central America as your choice? Think again. Except in Argentina, you and natives do not look the same. If you walk down the street, everyone knows that you are different. Everyone knows that you are a rich American. You are an easy mark for every criminal or aggressive beggar who will chase you down the street. Bystanders will not want to risk their life for you. You will be confined to a gated community where the guards carry military rifles and might disappear if things get bad. How do I know this? Because I had business trips to South and Central America during my career. I know what life is like there, for those who are not tourists on a guarded tour. Here, I have no fear and less caution than I would have on the street of any American city of 100,000 people. When I walk down the street, no one knows that I am an American unless I speak. Speaking about verbal communication, it is another reason to avoid certain parts of the world. If you think that learning an Asiatic language after you have reached 50 years of age is possible, think again. It is simply too different and too difficult. If you think that people in South America speak any English, think again about that too. I ask you, if second-generation Hispanics cannot pronounce the word ask, what makes you think that more than 5% of Central or South Americans speak any English at all? The fact is, they don't want to learn English, and except for 5%, they have and will not. You need to choose a place where the average person on the street knows 100 words of recognizable English. Then you can learn at least 100 words in their language, and with the help of Google Translate you can get by. Anyway, I have already disqualified all of Central and South America except for Puerto Rico because of safety and isolation issues. Puerto Rico is too expensive. So where else? Well, obviously not Southern Asia. Religion, specifically Islam, is a problem. Tropical diseases and diseases caused by poor sanitation may be a problem. I spent a year in Vietnam, and although life there is better now, it is still too damn hot. Most of Western Europe is too expensive. Even Poland is too expensive now. Africa, forget it, we would be even more out of place. What is left? The old Soviet Union is left, with Russia, Belarus, Ukraine, Georgia, and Moldova as prime candidates. Maybe the Baltics. Maybe Bulgaria or the Balkans. If your assets are near that $1.5 million mark, Austria and Spain are okay choices depending on whether you prefer mountains or ocean beaches. 6 years ago I chose Ukraine. We have a war now, but I do not regret this decision. After all, I was a soldier in Vietnam, and an explosion a half-mile away twice a month is not a big deal to me. Maybe the war will come to Kiev also, but probably not. If I had to make this choice now, I would choose Georgia. Personally, I hope Ukraine survives as a nation that poses no risk to Russia and therefore is not occupied by Russia. I like the Ukrainian people. I don't want all of the men and many of the women to die to cover up what Biden did here when he was vice president. And that is 90% of why we have this war, because of what Biden threatened for Russia. Because Biden wanted Russia to invade and destroy Ukraine to cover up what he and his son did. So, these are your choices, while you still have choices. Number 1. Do nothing now and let the people who care about you or should care about you make your decision about what kind of nursing home spends all your money. Whether it is fair to them or not, force them to make your decision. Number 2. Think seriously and then pay a visit to the 10 to 15 nations on or adjacent to this map that are attractive to you. Don't believe what you see on TV or read about in the newspapers. It is all sensationalized lies. Go see for yourself. Before I end this video, please like it and subscribe to my channel if you have not already done so. I have a lot of videos about Ukraine and I create about one a week. I am now also creating videos about survival and prosperity for Americans living in Joe Biden's dysfunctional and collapsing United States. Please feel free to comment also. I try to answer comments, and you may get valuable ideas from those Americans who are not hurting small children for their perversions, not woke and not corrupt, and not drugging themselves into insensibility.